Okay, great challenge at home in front of our crowd versus an AFC opponent. Both teams 2-2. Understand what's at stake, and I think the guys are really understanding who this team is that we're facing, because week in and week out it changes. The personnel changes, the scheme changes week to week. So really diving in right now on this Chargers team. They're well coached. Very similar. We're similar. They're similar, obviously, to last year. There's some new faces in there on both sides. So you do have the tape from last season when we played them early. A lot of games in between for both sides to look at as well. I think what you start with their defense, some really good players. Number one, Khalil Mack, who gone against quite a bit when I was at the Vikings and he was in Chicago. Very, very powerful football player. We played against him last season when he was here with the Bears. In the back end, just Derwin James can show up anywhere. Can be the post safety, can be a half-field safety, can play linebacker, can play nickel. You really have to know where he is, and then he's just an active football player. I think he had 16 tackles versus us last season. So really good football player. Multiple fronts, multiple coverages, impressive group. Offensively, number one pass offense. So that gets your attention right away. Very good quarterback, as we all know. Good young quarterback. Accurate, strong arm, makes great decisions. Athletic, still moving around really well, despite the injury, but you really don't see that affecting his play. Weapons on the perimeter, a really good running back who can hurt you in a bunch of different ways, a good tight end, so it's an impressive group across the board, sound special teams. So really getting to know this team right now, diving in, understanding some of the adjustments that we're going to make on offense, defense, special teams in this game, putting together a plan so guys can go play fast on Sunday. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Today would be.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be out there. We'll see how it goes, but he'll be out there.
Kevin, your defense has been pretty good through the first 3 quarters of games this year. In the fourth quarter, it's the worst in the NFL by a bunch of different metrics. What do you make of that? What's happening there?
Yeah, obviously you're trying to play 4 quarters of football, offense, defense, special teams. And unfortunately, we've had some issues in the fourth quarter that have led to points. And think back to week 1, think back to week 2, where we unfortunately gave up big plays that really can't happen and shouldn't happen. I think we've gone a long way in working on those type of things. So I think we just got to continue to play sound football, get lined up, number one, and play the defense that's executed.
What happened to the run defense in the second half in Atlanta?
Yeah, I thought, prior to that long drive, it was keeping them in check. And I want to give them credit. Obviously, that's a good run offense. So prior to that, doing a nice job. They got theirs, which is going to happen. But it's always a combination of things. It's always one guy here, one guy there. We could always, you always question, could I have put him in a better position on the play call? All those things. So there's not one answer to that.
What kind of boost to get Miles back on that practice field today, and what can he bring if he can play?
Yeah, good to have Miles. Just even in the walkthrough, Mary Kay, just having his presence and having him in the meetings, and he's a big part of what we do. So good to have him back out there. And then I haven't seen him practice yet. He's worked out, obviously off to the side, so I'll get to watch him practice today and then get a good feel for where he is.
Do you think Monty's going to practice this week?
I hope so.
And Greedy Williams, we see he's coming back. Do you think he could play on Sunday?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the first step, Jeff, and getting him out there to practice. And then he's doing great. He's been doing a great job off to the side in his rehab. So get him into practice, get him some plays here, and see how he responds.
I'm going to go back to Jake talking about the fourth quarter. Could it be that you had some guys out there that aren't used to playing 30, 40, 50 snaps on that D-line? They, not a conditioning thing, but just play a lot of reps.
Yeah, I mean, yes, obviously when a team goes on a long drive, you're tired on defense, they're tired on offense. So it's one of those things. We understood that guys were going to have to step up and play a little bit more than they're used to, but that's just part of the game.
You go back to Herbert. Do you see a big change from him last year to this year just as he evolves?
I think he's evolving. He's getting better. I mean, I think young players just get better with more and more reps. I see a young man who sees it very clearly, big, can see it from the pocket, and just can drive every throw, can throw with anticipation and touch. they do a really nice job schematically in getting the ball out of his hands. He doesn't take sacks. And then moving him on the pocket, max protecting, takes some shots to some, Mike Williams, as we know, is a very, very good wide receiver. And across the board, Keenan Allen, the tight end, it's a really impressive group.
We've talked obviously about the breakdowns that have happened in the fourth quarter. Do you think focus has anything to do with it, being able to maintain the necessary focus for all four quarters?
I mean, it's definitely an important part of this game is playing 60 minutes. I think that's probably goes without saying. I think for us, what we try to do always is letting our team know that you have to lock in for 60 minutes. It's a prerequisite when you're playing NFL football because you just don't know when that play that's going to turn the tide is going to occur. So locking in for 60 minutes is always going to be an important part of this game.
Hey, Kevin, when we talked to you on Monday, you said that the breakdown on that long pass was a technique error. And we've heard about communication in the first two games. So which of those is one of those easier to correct than the other?
Yeah, I would tell you, Jeff, obviously when you're playing good defense, everybody's on the same page. So that's number one. And then with technique, in the run defense, if you're out of your gap, the ball can get in that gap and you got to tackle them for maybe a 5-yard gain, 10-yard gain, what it might be. Same thing, pass defense, when you're out of your position, so to speak, which happens. The game happens fast. If you're out of position, those big passes can turn into big plays, and that's kind of what we saw there last week.
Are there certain benchmarks you're looking at for both Miles and Jadeveon and what they, as they progress through this week for them to be able to play?
Yeah, I think they're both on two different progressions, and we'll treat them as such. See how Miles looks today, and then obviously just kind of wait and see with Jadeveon.
When you talk about Khalil, do you see him trying to take on a bigger role with Bosa not being in there? It looked like he had a big game. What is the last one?
I don't know that he's taken on a bigger role. He's a great player. He's very, very powerful, has unbelievable bend, plays hard, very, very good at rushing the passer, as we all know, has multiple moves. In the run game, can win at the point of attack, can win as a chase player. So he's a big part of their defense, Scott, but he was from day one when he got there. Obviously, I know Joey Bosa is out on IR, but Khalil Mack's a great player.
Greg Delpit was talking about how the defense needs more of a killer mentality in the fourth quarter. Does that just have to come from the players? Is there virtually nothing the coaching staff can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Marla, it just goes back to playing a 60-minute game. You do have to lock in for those 60 minutes. So whether you call it a killer mentality or a finishing mentality or whatever it is, I think it's important that offense, defense, and special teams has that mentality because that's what's required in the NFL. We all have seen examples in our season and multiple people's seasons where you got to play a 60-minute game.
John was talking today about the fact that with Justin Herbert, like he recognizes those mistakes so quickly that you can get torched for a big play if there's a breakdown in a secondary. I guess, do you feel like these guys are more locked in and aware of that, and especially considering you did play him last year?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think part of when you're playing this team, the Chargers, they go fast, and then they go fast to get lined up, and then they have multiple shifts in motion. So getting aligned is really important, and it's doubly important when you're at home in our building, which is really, really loud when we're on defense. So all of that nonverbal communication at home is really important.
Would you say that even some of Miles in the game and maybe even some of Jadeveon, if they could only play a certain percentage of the snaps, would be a lot better than nothing?
I think that's fair to say, yes.
Does it go over what those guys mean to the run defense? I mean, the way they set the edge, just as you said before, their presence out there alone.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what we're talking about with Khalil Mack. When you have, I think every coach wants great players out there, and you're always asking the general manager, hey, give me more great players, makes you a better coach. But with those two players in particular, they're both really physical football players, and I think it shows up in the run and in the pass. I think, when you're playing run defense and you're knocking people back and you're setting the edge, and sometimes you're setting the edge so that someone else can make the play. So I think both of those guys are adept at that.